going into the Miami race, we looked at how popular F1 is in the American market. The figurehead of that, obviously the figurehead of Formula One really, is Lewis Hamilton. So popular in America, such a huge following globally, but specifically in that market as well. First American race of the year, and he's really been underperforming so far. How would you approach that element of negative pressure? Obviously, Formula One is a hugely pressurized environment, and it's not something that Lewis is new to. I mean, he joined the sport with Fernando Alonso as his teammate at McLaren. That's a huge amount of pressure. But for that environment in underperforming after such a huge span of being at the top of the pack, how do you view that kind of situation?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how it's kind of playing out for him and how he's kind of reacting with it. I think from what I can see, he's always someone who will look at his own performance and be very kind of matter of fact about it. And looking at some of the Mercedes debriefs that they've done, they've sort of said, it's not like Lewis has suddenly lost his ability to drive an F1 car. It's just that, they're not quite getting into the performance window that they need to. And they've had some bad luck where they went in the wrong direction with some setup changes. And I think for Lewis, it's ultimately, he needs to approach it in terms of kind of day by day and looking at his own performance and his approach to it. Obviously, he's got a big team of incredible engineers who are supporting him through it. And you can almost see in the body language of Mercedes, they're a little bit like, we're so used to being at the front. And it's going to be very interesting to see because I don't think this is going to be an overnight fix. It's not going to be something that they can just click their fingers and find a solution and suddenly they'll be back battling at the front. I don't think it's going to be like that. Perhaps towards the end of the season, they'll start to get the car working, but then you've got to remember that the other teams have had that entire amount of time of research and development as well, and their performance will be further down the road as well. So Mercedes have got a long way ahead of them. And I think as a driver who's so used to being so dominant, it must be very, very difficult for him to see those kind of timesheets and see where he's ending up. But at the same time, he just needs to focus on himself and his performance and his input into the whole equation, and not let that slip. That's what we saw from his teammate George Russell, with Williams finishing towards the back, repetitively for so long. Yet George still stayed invested. He still focused on his inputs. He still focused on just being the best version of himself. And ultimately, that's how Lewis, George, Mercedes, Toto will get through this period, and how they'll kind of come back to being where they're used to being is just focusing on their own backyard and not watching the championship and what's going on, because ultimately that's not what's important. What's important is getting back up in front of the front of the pack.
And I think someone else who is going to be really important in that recovery for Lewis, or turning the tide of his season around, would be his personal trainer, Angela Cullen, who has been with him, basically his whole Mercedes journey, and really essential in managing that mindset as well as the physical element of it. That idea of having a personal trainer, a bit like the role that you play in club level motorsports, could be really, really critical in helping him kind of, turn that around and having someone to lean on in those tough times, so it doesn't become such an isolated, pressurized experience. How do you view the idea of a kind of permanent personal physical trainer? It seems like Formula One teams have just adapted. That's the system that they're going with. When you've got the budget, is that probably just the right move?
Yeah, I think, it really depends on the person and their kind of relationship. And ultimately, I think what's so great about Lewis and Angela is they just clicked, that for whatever reason, their relationship just works really well. And they're able to just work together and be so productive. I think one of the biggest things when Angela came into to start coaching Lewis was at the same time he sort of went to being vegan as well. So
Right.
the ability to sort of optimize his nutrition and just be like, listen, this is going to take a bit of time, but we'll work through it and we'll get there. That sort of having that sort of support network is massively important. And it's one of the things that I see so often is that people will start to do the right thing. Like, say, for example, Lewis might have thought, oh, okay, I need to go vegan because, I want to go vegan or I need to go vegan or whatever it may be. And he's going down that path. But then because it's such a big change, to do that on your own can be quite daunting. And if, for me, I find that people will start doing the right thing or start moving towards their goals, but almost like just before they're about to see the benefits from it, they'll stop doing it because they don't think it's working. So having someone, that's why F1 have kind of gone for that model, is because you're looking for tenths, hundredths, thousandths of a second, and in terms of lap time. And so when you're looking at that level of detail, you need to have someone who has got your back. You need to have someone who is making sure that your food is exactly as it needs to be. They're making sure that you're, adapting your sleep to deal with jet lag. They're making sure, all these things, because, you think of where these drivers have been already this year. They've been all the way to Australia. They've been to the Middle East. They've been to Europe. They've now been to the US, and jet lag's big going that way. So, sleep and all that kind of thing is going to be massively affected. And having someone in your corner who can be like, right, let's start adapting your sleep now so that you'll be fine for race day, all that sort of thing. It means that you can focus on other areas. And Angela just seems to have got the formula right with Lewis. They've got that relationship and it just works. And I think she is a massive part of his journey and why he's been so successful.